Hello grade 9s, hope wherever you are, life's treating you well. Here we've got a quick video running through the English exam revision guide. My intention here is to be pretty quick. We'll be going through this in class and so we'll have time for questions and answers and such there. This is just a quick run through, so if you're at home, you're able to have a look at it and be confident and ready to go wherever you might be. First up, really quickly, there's nothing surprising in this exam. If you've been paying attention, listening throughout the semester, you should be set to go, and hopefully all the notes will be in your book ready to go. Here we go. So there are 4 parts in total. The first part, as you know, is the vocabulary section. Nothing complex there. You've chosen your 10 words. For that, just make sure you know the part of speech for each of those words. Make sure you've got the definition and ensure you can use it in a sentence. That's going to be the trickiest one there, using it in a sentence. If you'd like to quickly check that with me, I'm very happy to talk to you one-on-one in class, or you can send me an email, of course. Second part, narrative poetry. Okay, so ensure you understand and can give a definition for and can identify and discuss the following. So you need to know what these are, be able to give a definition for them, and if I was to show you a piece of poetry that had these in them, I want you to be able to point to them and tell me about them. For example, sympathy, juxtaposition, meter, imagery, metaphor, hyperbole, tone, theme, iambic meter, and iambic pentameter. Now that's going to be the trickiest one there, and yes, there is a question relating to iambic pentameter. So I want you to find out the difference between iambic meter and iambic pentameter. Check out the other video I gave you that I uploaded on YouTube. That tells you what the difference is there. So just remember, you need to understand what they are, give me a definition for them, identify it in a piece of poetry, and be able to tell me what impact it has. For example, if there's a piece of poetry there and it's using some imagery, I want you to tell me what emotional impact that imagery is having, or that hyperbole is having, or that meter might be having. Now, you won't need to give a definition for all of these in the exam, but you will need to give a definition for a selection of them. So make sure you know how to do all of those things with all of these. Cool. Next up, ensure you can use the following techniques as though you're writing in a piece of poetic writing. So I want you to be able to actually use juxtaposition. Make sure you can actually write a piece of writing containing imagery. Use a metaphor and using hyperbole. So you will be required to use a selection of these techniques in your exam. So make sure you can actually write using juxtaposition or write using imagery. Finally, for part 2, make sure you understand what it means for a poem or a photo to comment on something and how to discuss that. So what's going to happen is in the exam, I'm going to give you a photo or a poem. I'm going to say something like, this text, whether that be a poem or a photo, comments on something. What comment does it make? Have a look through your notes. We talked about this in class also. So that's narrative poetry. Hopefully you're getting the sense that it's just recapping all the big themes of our term, of our semester, so nothing unexpected. Next up, persuasive texts. Ensure you can use, understand, give a definition for, and can identify and discuss the following. Pathos, logos, ethos. Thematic hyperbole, connotations. So you need to be able to use them. So I might say something like, on the topic of cats are better than dogs, use the technique of logos or pathos or ethos or something. Definition for, and same deal as in poetry, I'm going to be giving you pieces of writing and I want you to be able to identify and discuss the use of these techniques in that writing. So I might say, for example, I might not, but I might say something like, the following piece of writing uses connotations. Where are the connotations used and what impact do they have? Cool. Finally, part 4, extended response. You'll be required to formally analyse a narrative poem. Now, I'm not going to tell you what that narrative poem is. You'll be expected to write in paragraphs, have an introduction, body, and conclusion. Identify and discuss the impact the poem has, and what techniques it uses to have this impact. Finally, to write formally. So we remember that poetry analysis is all about what impact does the poem have, and how does it have that impact. So make sure that you are familiar, this is back at the top then, next to our good friend the koala, make sure you're able to actually look for these things in a poem, and make sure you're able to discuss what impact they're having in a real poem. Down the bottom again. Okay. Naturally, I get that your piece in the exam isn't going to be as polished as a piece you'd give me for an assignment. You've got maybe 30, 40 minutes to do it. Of course, it's not going to be brilliant, and my marks will reflect that. However, it is still important that you're able to identify and discuss the main techniques used in the poem. So the poem I've chosen has between 3 and 6 techniques you could talk about. I'll be expecting you to choose at least 3. If you've got time, go for more. If you don't, that's okay. I'll be expecting you to choose at least 3 techniques and discuss them using that paragraph style that we looked at in class. So your paragraph should have topic sentences, pieces of evidence or examples, discussions, and linking statements. I will be looking for that, and your grades will be reflected in your use of those structures. Cool. Now, to study for the extended response, that is a poetry analysis, you can do a few things. Firstly, and make sure you do this. If you don't, you're a little bit silly. Make sure you reread your former analyses. So go back into your assessment folder and make sure you reread the analyses that you completed last term, especially the feedback given. I would have given you feedback saying improve this, maybe leave that out, don't forget to do this next time. Reread that stuff is gold. I'm going to make available my example or examples on sector. Reread those just to get your head back into the mind frame of what poetry analysis looks like. Finally, if you're really eager, the best thing you could do is actually practice analysing a new poem under timed conditions and submitting that your analysis to me, and I'll give you some feedback. So if you're really keen, find a narrative poem online, or if you want, you can have a chat to me and I can give you a couple good examples. Look through it, set the timer for 30, 40 minutes, which is probably about the time you'll have in your exam. Your exam goes for a total time of 90 minutes. You'll have probably just a bit of an estimate around 30, 40 minutes to do your extended response, and actually have a practice writing under those conditions. Write it down on a piece of pad paper, give it to me, and I'll give you some feedback on it the next day. Bit of a photo of Mr. Bean here, because it's never a bad time for Mr. Bean. Finally, some general tips. None of these are all that unexpected. Read every question carefully. Some questions may ask for specific requirements, such as 2 examples of pathos, for example. So read every question carefully. Importantly, take note of how many marks each question is worth. If a question is worth more than 1 mark, you'll need to give either a response involving more than one aspect or an in-depth or detailed response. Okay? So if it says it's worth 2 marks, make sure you give it 2 pieces of information, because I'll be looking for that when I grade your work. As always, if you run out of time, particularly with the extended response, write in dot points. Now that will affect your grades slightly, because I still will be giving you grades for writing quality in your extended response in the exam. However, it's better to do that than to leave blank space. Next up, unless a question specifically asks for it, you do not need to write in full sentences. For example, if the question is, in literature, define what theme is, you can simply write, the deep, meaningful, and universal ideas behind the events of a text. You don't need to write something like, in literature, a theme is, and so on and so forth. You can just skip to the crux there. In those questions, I will be giving you grades on the semantics, on the crux, on the ideas that you convey, not on your phrasing. Importantly, if a question asks you to write out in full, for example, your extended response and at least one other question in your exam. If it asks you to write out in full, do, in those situations, write out in full sentences. Next up, if you see a technique, concept, or idea that you are unfamiliar with, you should consult your notes. None of this stuff is new. It's either in your notes or on a video or a handout that I prepared for you. Ask a friend. Google it. Now, importantly, if you Google it, make sure you check your understanding with me. Don't just Google it and assume that Google is going to be 100% correct. Often it is, sometimes it's not. And I would hate to have to mark you down because you found a slightly unreliable website. So if you find some information, for example, if you want to know what a metaphor is, Google what is a metaphor, take that information and just put it on an email to me and say, hey, Mr. Grieger, this is the understanding I have of metaphor thanks to Google. Does that look about right? And I'll send an email back saying yes, no, or otherwise. Cool. Finally, and this is deliberately last, ask me. So I want you to be independent. I want you to check these things first, and then only once you're stuck, then ask me. And when you ask me, don't say, hey, Mr. Grieger, what's the answer to this question? Say something like, Mr. Grieger, I'm having trouble with theme, for example. This is what I think it is. Could you just tell me if I'm on the right track or give me some feedback if I'm not? All right, last bit. There is nothing sneaky or unexpected in the coming exam. Make sure you do revise, do take it seriously and do your best, but don't freak out or panic. Be proactive in your study, look through this guide and make a plan of what you need to revisit. For example, there's going to be maybe 50 to 70% of the stuff here that you're like, yep, cool, I'm all over that. There'll be some stuff you're like, nah, no idea. Actually plan, talk to me, do some research, be proactive, don't leave it till the last minute. Make sure you check with me and I'll be able to help you out. Last point here, get together in groups and chat about it. I know you've got heaps of more exciting things to talk about, but for the next week or so, do help each other out. When you catch up, say, hey, you seem pretty good at English and stuff. What are you doing for this one? I'm struggling with that. You are welcome to help each other out. Obviously, when you get to the exam, it's individual work and that's important. However, revising and helping each other out is completely fine. I do think you are pretty well positioned for this exam, grade 9s. We've got some brilliant thinkers there. You guys have been switched on all semester. I'm pretty confident you are going to do this, and I'm not just saying that. Good luck. Please do be proactive. Do let me know if I can help. I reckon you'll smash it. Good luck. See you back in the real world sometime.